In this criticism carousel, I go over the games that I played in March and April that I didn't do a full review on, but definitely find worth playing. What I learned in March and April is that there's a lot of good Metroidvanias out there, coming out every week. But as suggested in the last video, which reminds me I still didn't do it with that one, I'll put timestamps to each individual game that I go over in the description, and on screen here as well. So if you've heard of a game, or want to know something specific about one game or another, you can jump right to it. With no further ado, let's get into it. It's very easy to look at 9 Years of Shadows and be blown away by its art style, thinking it's a pretty game and nothing more. And let me be real, the presentation in general is the standout feature of the game from top to bottom. The beautiful worlds created here, specifically with the use of color, is captivating, as the style reminds me of the 2D Castlevanias on the GBA and DS, while still being its own unique thing. The character designs in both the pixel and character portraits are incredibly well done given some of the musical themes, and the music itself gives a sense of mystery, yet allows for calming moments and then transition into full action. For an indie title, it has some of the best UI elements in terms of being readable but still stylish, and I wouldn't be against having an animated show of this world. I mean, just look at it. As for the gameplay, this isn't the most complicated in the Metroidvania genre, but it's not trying to be, and I think that somehow has hurt it when it comes to the more hardcore players in the genre. This isn't a Hollow Knight or Ender Lilies, but I still enjoyed a lot of what I played here. Combat is direct and simple, but still effective, forcing you to use small advantages like your different color armors wisely, but allowing for some leeway in terms of difficulty. I find that the game rewards positioning and precise hits with small weak points that can be exploited but takes skill, but still allows more generic approaches for players who don't necessarily see how to tackle those enemies. It felt like a game that I'd love to see speedrun just to see how well players could take advantage of it, but also would like to see how new players to the genre respond to the game and its world. In fact, I feel the game is more accessible yet still challenging, with elements like hugging your buddy to heal, where a preset animation time is done to fully heal you if you don't hit the hug with the meter, and that time isn't insignificant, so enemies can end up killing you if you don't get the space, especially in boss fights. You really do feel the pressure in boss fights, and I really did have fun with several of them. Some of them were really action-packed and took advantage of all the tools available. The game's pace in terms of movement also really did well, not sticking on any one new movement or feature too long, but also harked back to old skills in later challenges. Things like turning into a mermaid and swimming through the waterfalls was smooth, and I really did feel a lot more powerful as the game went on. The story is also intriguing with this world and the evil that befalls it, and how you're a fighter that is just trying to find a way to keep things together, and how you run across this mysterious place and how it connects to your quest. The people and allies you come across are mysterious, yet do have good setup backstories for being smaller parts of the overall game. And I really do want to go back and finish it, because I just sort of haven't had the time to yet. Downside of streaming so many different indie games over on Twitch a week. Yes, I'm plugging that here. Really, 9 Years of Shadows shows a polish that many games don't have nowadays on a lot of levels, and knew what kind of game it was going to be from the get-go. And if you're willing to get lost in a world of color and great design that is going to be played by a lot and enjoyed by a lot, maybe not liked by a few, 9 Years of Shadows is definitely worth your time and money. For the next game on the list, many of you may not be old enough to remember a game called Lemmings, which was a strategy simulator game where you directed little lemmings to an exit and had to save them from dying by basically telling them what to do. Well, consider Moons of Darslon a more active version of it, where you actively guide a series of colonists and spacemen to safety by taking care of threats and directing them to where to go. It's been a while since I've played a game similar to Lemmings, yet Moons of Darslon really kept things simple yet rewarding, especially with secondary objectives and completion goals, and I may enjoy it more than the classical game. Heresy, I know, but it's a testament to Moons of Darslon's game design and control set. This is the type of game you're going to either love or hate, because the game does not compromise on most everything it does. It's an homage to 80s and 90s PC titles with its crunchy sound design, pixel presentation that will hark back to the days of 5-inch floppy disks, and it captures it better than 99% of the homage games out there. It will also hark back to the days of games that were difficult, but not difficult in the form of reaction times and pattern recognition. It's a game where you need to use your head, understanding how to use your commands, such as coming to your position or staying where they are, to keep the colonists alive. While this sounds like just one big escort mission, it's helped that the AI is the right kind of smart and the right kind of dumb. They will jump off cliffs if you tell them to, even if it hurts them, for example, but they won't willingly just walk off the side without your direction. The game does a great job of setting up the little keys to learn through its early level design, introducing things slowly but surely to deal with the more difficult challenges of using the jetpack and laser gun to keep them safe from alien forces. You will die a bunch, but you'll usually learn something in the process. And that's the point. Knowledge is power here, and granted, it does have some frustrations from the era it's directly taking from. Some levels can be insanely long, and if you die, you end up doing a whole 20 minutes of progress again, which is frustrating. But that's the real punishment for your mistakes. Because make no mistake, almost every death will come from you being too aggressive or not thinking about the solution wisely. So if you're a strategy type player or person who really likes the more intelligent part of games, not necessarily the reaction time of things, but more so, let me think about how to deal with this, like puzzles, this is the game for you. As long as you have a little bit of a frustration tolerance. The next game on the list may actually be a game that you've heard of, because, well, it's doing pretty well for itself compared to the other games on this list. But make no mistake, Afterimage is a game that I keep on wanting to go back to, and for good reason. It has stunning art direction, a wide variety of pleasing visual designs in different areas, all with focusing on the core of great Metroidvania gameplay with key systems that help elevate it to be among the best in the genre. Afterimage will be a game that people will be talking about even years from now, because it gets so much right. The focus on weapons having their own feel and utility in the 2-weapon system allows for some interesting builds and combinations, all having major strengths and weaknesses that expose some of the great enemy variety and attack patterns you'll have to deal with over the game. It's a game that definitely focuses on positioning and smart movement more than anything else, being a challenge, but not to the point of pulling out your hair. The controls are in that sweet spot, not being overly forgiving to allow you to avoid mistakes, but allowing you to really put yourself in the right places to succeed. Boss fights are a great test of skill that push you to your limits as well, as you won't get them the first time around most of the time, but you'll make little steps every time you face them until you put up your hands in victory. But where Afterimage really succeeds is just the feeling of exploration. There's always a new story or area around the corner that you want to fully discover, coupled with a whole new feeling you get from the visual design. Honestly, I'm more of a mechanical Metroidvania game lover, and am less about the exploration within it, but even I sat here really loving every moment of the game, and what I could find around the next corner. I could go on and on about how every element of Afterimage seems to really help itself in terms of the visual design, sound design, gameplay, the equipment, everything along that line. But this is one of those games where I feel like just go look at everybody else and what they're saying about the game. I mean, everyone seems to love this game. And there's a good reason for that. Next up on the list is Wall World. And before you start, I know that there are Dome Keeper fans out there that are seeing the footage of Wall World on the screen and going, it's just a Dome Keeper clone. But I would hold back on that assumption. The fact is that yes, the games came out within a year of each other, and there's definitely similarities between them. But there's also vast differences as well, especially when it comes to the run-like progression and the emphasis on the roguelite nature of the game here. Sure, you definitely have mining and combat elements in both, and there's definitely a progression on resources and upgrades that can go differently each run based on what you find. But one thing that I don't think anyone can argue about when it comes to Wall World is simple. That price tag of $5 is an absolute steal when it comes to value on multiple levels. It may not be your favorite game in the end, but if you don't think it's worth it after playing 2 hours or 5 or 10, I don't know what your expectations are, because they may be way, way too high. Normally, I talk a lot more about objective things when it comes to my standard reviews or these sort of mini reviews. And don't get me wrong, I like the meta progression here, allowing you to get further and further each time progression-wise, and still keeping the challenge up while allowing you to maximize your efficiency and how to collect things, what upgrades to get, what weapons and enemies to focus on in each part of the run. But with this game in particular, something clicked when it came to the sweet spot for my own self. If you don't know, I am diagnosed with ADD with OCD tendencies. And when it comes to games, I recognize that I could become obsessed with games, or even addicted very easily to certain elements. It's somewhat how my brain is programmed. There are genres of games that I avoid even on this channel for review because I know it could be disastrous to running the review channel and the games that I want to cover, or even my life. MMOs are something that I could see myself getting really lost in and also really sort of drawn down into. Card roguelikes are definitely one of those genres as well, but I'm a little bit more willing to dive into those. But what I found interesting about Wall World was my want to play the game and enjoy it, yet I feel like I could get what I wanted out of it in one session or two and be good for a little bit. Still wanting to play, but not that I had to play. And that's something that I don't necessarily come across in terms of that balance that often. The combat was simple and refined and yet felt balanced. There was enough variety in the early going to not get bored, but enough familiarity where my knowledge was rewarded. The game felt like I was taking steps every run and also making progress, and made even the runs that didn't work out feel worthy of my time. And that's where I think the game does shine. It may not have some depths of other games in the genre, but it still has a reasonable amount, and frankly every nitpick I could do is counteracted by the fact that it's a $5 game that gives hours and hours of content. Sure, it's not the best when it comes to bang for buck, that's Vampire Survivors. But if Vampire Survivors is the S tier, then Wall World, it's getting a solid A. And that's why you should look at it. Next up, compared to the other Metroidvanias on this list, Vernal Edge definitely is probably the red-headed stepchild of this list. There are elements that will frustrate players out there. The lack of direction and focus on where to go in this more open Metroidvania world, along with no real clues at times, can frustrate the most seasoned of Metroidvania players. and I hate to think about what someone like Jay Reviews would do if he was forced to play this game without a walkthrough. So why is it on this list? Well, despite that, it's a game that has a combat system that I think nails the feeling of being a powerful warrior in a Devil May Cry 2D format, while still being able to humble you with a death or two because you try to cheese or get overly fancy during a fight. Movement takes a little bit to master, but feels great when jumping from one enemy to the next. And quite honestly, this is a game that could use more combat in the big picture, and maybe a little bit more enemy variety. Like, it's not that exploring and doing movement puzzles aren't fun here. They are. I did really like several of the different types I ran across. But it's when I got into the boss fights and really felt the challenge of using my health and skills that took this game to make it onto this list, and made me want to play more of it eventually. On my list of games that I started and really should get back to one of these days. Yes, that list is longer than a number of scammers in the crypto financial space. There's just something that feels so right about fighting in this game, and it's one I would recommend you at least try, or watch out for when it goes on sale. The last game I'll be covering on this list is Rusted Moss, and it'd be very easy for me to point to the use of a grappling hook to the game for why you should play it, but I think that would do the game a general disservice when it comes to its other strengths. Its gun-focused combat in the twin-stick shooter format is great and actually challenging. The story is interesting while having a style that's familiar yet pleasing to look at, and it's got a good balance of challenge and exploration in the Metroidvania genre. There's a lot to like about Rusted Moss, but I said grappling hook and you're still thinking about it, aren't you? The thing is, grappling hooks in video games are actually quite tricky. They can be very finicky in terms of your physics and momentum systems, and can trivialize certain challenges without having the right restraints on them. It's why you see its equivalent in a lot more open world games like Spider-Man and Just Cause, and maybe not in a lot more contained experiences, because if you don't get the game design right, you're going to have a bad time in them. Luckily, the devs of Rusted Moss understood how to use the grappling hook in more ways than one. Sure, they designed levels to have a variety of different jumps and angle types to force you to think about how to use the grappling hook, but where I really appreciate their efforts is how they used it in boss fights and combat, actually doing more than just letting you move fast with it, but actually forcing you to think about how you can use it to keep out of danger. Sure, you'll get frustrated here and there with the hook, maybe not working the way you really want it to, but there's always going to be a form of that with it. And that's part of its charm, mastering an element that has some variance to it. The game's story is mysterious, yet makes me want to know more about the world and how it came to ruin. And frankly, it's just a cute little game that charmed me from top to bottom. It's definitely worth your time and money. Anyway, those were 6 games that I streamed over on Twitch that I think is worth your time that I didn't do a full review on. So if you want to know more about games that are upcoming or just came out, you should probably go follow me on Twitch or subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already. And I do want to hear some feedback in terms of this format. Again, this is something new I'm trying in terms of these more condensed experiences and trying to give you the information you need to make a purchase decision, so let me know in the comments section below. As for what's next on the channel, I don't know yet. I did request a review for the upcoming Spike Chunsoft game Brain Code, and even though I probably won't get one because I haven't heard anything about it, the fact is I do want to review that one in full. It's a game that is by the people that basically are the Danganronpa people, sort of, kind of, not really. But I really do like what the game has shown up to this point and do want to fully review it. I also do want to do a full review on Greedventory. If you followed me on Twitch, you know that I've loved that game and I think it deserves more attention. And I do need to beat it, but, you know, it's just going to take a little bit of time to really get my thoughts around it because it's truly a unique game. Other than that, you could always leave games that you want me to review in the comments section below. Before you say anything, Dynasty, yes, Spiritfarer, it's on the list. Anyway, That's it for now, and as always, keep on gaming.